All right, welcome everyone. Today I'm joined by Drew from Tailosive. Hey, Drew. You
Hi.
run two channels, right? Or is it more than two?
Yeah, it's basically two. Yeah,
Okay, you
that's it.
run Tailosive Tech and Tailosive
Yes,
EV, correct?
correct.
All right. So I know you're really busy, so thanks for taking time out of your day to talk to us.
No,
How
absolutely. Can I just say from the beginning, I'm a huge fan of your channel. I watch all your videos as quickly as I possibly can, and I'm a big fan. So I'm honored to be on your channel. Thank
Oh,
you.
thanks. And I watch all your videos too, Drew.
Oh, good.
Obviously you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. I'm just a hobbyist. You're a professional YouTuber. How how
Yeah, a full-time hobbyist.
how long have you been doing this?
Well, I've been doing it probably over 10 years for fun, but
Uh-huh.
I went full time about 6.5 years ago is when I
Oh,
like quit my job and just did YouTube, and that was it. And so far so good. As long as people are watching, I'll keep going. So we'll
that's
see how long
awesome.
it lasts.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, hey, I just want to know like how did you first hear about Aptera and how did you get
Ooh,
into it?
good question. I think I was talking to Chris Anthony about that too. I was trying to figure out. I think it was an Inside EVs article. I
Uh-huh.
was always very interested in EVs, mostly from a hatred of combustion engines. I just always hated the combustion, the complexities and all the maintenance. And I was just like, this sucks. I want to live in a world where we don't have to deal with combustion engines anymore. So I was always interested in EVs, and I was following them more and more closely as I got older. And then I think it was a news article. I can't remember who exactly made it, but they put the specs up, and they were like up to 1,000 miles of range and 40 miles a day of solar charging. And I was like, no way, that's a scam. Like, who is this? Who is out there claiming these bogus specs? Like, there's no way that's possible. I thought it was another Nikola situation. I was like, this can't be real. So I looked into it, and I saw the design, and I was immediately like looking for problems. But the more I looked into it and the more I dug into what their uh ideas were, and it was that first like 2019 launch video with the noir color, and they had it driving around, and the more I watched it, the more I was like, okay, that looks really cool. Actually, I suppose if you made it super aerodynamic, that would make sense. What about the battery? How heavy is the battery? So I just kept learning more and more, watching a lot of your videos along the way, and the more I watched and the more I learned, the more I realized, okay, these numbers aren't actually as crazy as they sound. It's actually just an aerodynamics and energy efficiency game. And the more I learned, the more intrigued I was, and the more I wanted to know as we got closer and closer, because I was mainly interested in EVs for their efficiency. So it started off with this, there's no way that's possible. And then I had all these follow-up questions about safety. And I went into it with a lot of skepticism, but I was just always impressed and amazed by the company's willingness to basically answer anything you ask. And that's another reason I loved your channel so much, was because you didn't pull any punches. Anytime there was an issue with the vehicle design or the way the vehicle is laid out, you would say, okay, how's that going to affect in the snow or the ice or potholes? And you would dive into it, different safety ratings and different crash situations, which ones are the most common. I've forwarded your videos to many people, by the way. So
Thank
it's
you.
just been a great like figuring out what do we really truly need in our vehicles. I think it's a great mental exercise, even for people who aren't necessarily the target demographic for the Aptera. I think can learn a lot from the company and from the ethos of it. So I'm a big fan now.
Okay, great. So it was kind of like 2020 when you, or 2021, or like when was it? Like
I
three
want to
years
say it was
ago?
end of 2019. I feel like it
Okay,
was
so like
right
right at the
when
very
that
beginning
launch
when they
video.
relaunched.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of them in the early 2000s when they had their hybrid version or whatever. I
Mhm.
looked that up later and
Yeah.
found out, oh wait, this company has been around for a while, or fizzled out and came
Huh.
back. And obviously, I for a long time, even before Aptera, was always in favor of like, okay, we finally are starting to make electric cars work. Why can't we just cover them in solar? And every time I suggested that to people, or anyone has suggested that to Elon or Tesla, or whoever, they're always like, well, it can't fully charge the battery within a single day, therefore it's not worth it. And I was like, no, that's not the point. It's supposed to be like supplemental charging. Like if it can just break even with the phantom drain, just like cover the cabin overheat protection, or cover the Sentry mode, the cameras recording, that would be great, just to know that the car's not going to kill itself in a parking lot at an airport, you know. And I felt like a crazy guy listening to all these people say, nah, solar, it's not a good idea. I'm like, we finally have the opportunity to make like a self-powered vehicle. This can't be done with gas. You can't just collect gasoline from the atmosphere. You can't do this with hydrogen. Electric's the only situation where we could literally just charge from the sun and that powers the vehicle. And everyone's like, nah, not worth it. And I was like, come on, this is a great idea. Even if it was just 10 or 20 miles a day, I would be interested. So yeah, they just make too much sense. If I had my own company, this is basically what I would be doing right now.
Right. So like when you saw it, you were like, that's the thing I was thinking about.
Exactly. I didn't know as much about the aerodynamics. That was news to me. When I first watched their video, they were like, 60% or something high like that of your energy at highway speed is just moving air out of the way. And I was like, what? Is that true? Are they serious? Because, I'm not a, engineer. I'm not a college student or anything. I didn't know much about this. And the more I looked into it, and I was seeing range tests be done where guys would tow a trailer with like a flat wall, but no payload, and they would get worse range than a full max payload trailer that was in a teardrop shape in a more aerodynamic design. And those were real world tests. So I was like, okay, there's proof to suggest that aero does actually make that big a difference. So and once I understood the reasoning behind the design, I fell in love with it more. I was like, okay, that makes it a lot cooler to me and much more eye-catching. So now I'm just a fan of the aesthetic too.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the same feeling I had when I first heard about it. Oh, you printed it out.
Yeah, this whole thing.
Oh, wait, did you print that out or did you get it?
I got it from all this were gifts. They set me up, thankfully.
Awesome. I think that green thing is like one of the early ones from like very early on in the thing.
Yeah. It's surprisingly intricate. You can see, I don't know if it shows up on camera, but they have the split window.
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah, you can see it.
But yeah, I was impressed. I actually made a clay model that looked horrible. Yeah. And I painted it, and I'm not an artist. It looked like a psychopath put it together. It was horrible. But I brought it to them and I just said, hey, you don't have to keep this, but if you would like it on your desk or something, here you go. And they said, only if you sign it. So I signed it, and then they gave me this as a like
an exchange.
So
that's awesome.
So I'm awesome. Biased. You can say I'm biased based on my experience.
Oh yeah. I mean, everyone's got a bias. Like I'm obviously biased because I run a fan channel. Like I'm a fan.
Yeah.
But I think I do try to be I try to be as intellectually honest as I can. And I think you are. So I like that. So
you more so than I.
This visit that you had with them, when was that?
It was November 27th.
Okay, so like right after Thanksgiving.
Pretty much. And we actually had a trip planned the next day, and I was trying to schedule a date just like you. They're so busy, they don't have a ton of free days, I'm sure you've discovered.
Yes.
So I was suggesting to them, how about this day, and nothing was going to work. And they said, can we push it out till December or till January? And I was like, I don't want to wait that long, man. I was like, so I just started sending them every like 4-hour window in the day I had. I was like, how about this day? And one of them happened to be like the morning before we left for a big trip to Colorado. And I was like, can you do it this morning? And they were like, okay, technically, yeah. So it was one of those things where we met with them early in the morning, filmed as much as we could, and then I had to drive home immediately afterwards for like 12 hours. It was a very long drive. Wow. So that's why I was asking him, like, can I take this today? That would be great. You don't need it, right? You'll have the PI build soon.
Right.
So it was a packed day, and they only told me I was going to get the test drive. That's all they said.
Right.
And then it was that morning basically where they said, actually, you might get to interview some people and you might get to look around. I was like, oh, great, wonderful.
Right.
More than I thought.
So what day was that? Was that a Friday or Thursday or Monday,
I think it
Tuesday?
was
It
a Monday.
was a
Let me double
Monday.
check. Yeah, I'll double check. Yeah, Monday morning.
Okay. So I think, I mean, like, so, we've been talking, and I try to go out to see them in November. Things didn't
Yeah,
work out. They're super busy. I also have a day job, and I gotta like work around that.
sure.
And then December, just like, it's just crazy with the holidays. I got busy. They're
Oh yeah.
busy. And so now I'm hoping to go like January. So I think it worked out great, because now you got, like, if I went in November, you and I would just have the same stuff,
Yeah,
and
that's
it
true.
would be kind of pointless. Like, but now, like, we see, like, what's the
Well, I'd like to
status.
meet you in person
Oh yeah,
still. That
that would have
wouldn't
been
be
cool.
pointless.
But like now, from your video, we kind of see like what the status of their pre-factory is right now, and then
Right.
hopefully in January we'll see some progress. Is
Yeah,
what I'm hoping for.
I think there's a lot of interesting developments with the PI builds going on right
Yeah.
now. It felt like they were kind of prepping for that while I was there. So
Mhm.
obviously, knowing your depth of knowledge in the company and knowing how you ask the good questions and the tough questions, I'm just as excited as going as I am to see your video covering it and
Mhm.
everything. And yeah, that's gonna be fun. I look forward to that.
So, you've gotten to drive one of them, and I've never been able to drive them. I just got a ride in the beta. So
Oh, okay.
you didn't get a ride in the beta or anything, so you don't have any frame of reference to like compare between the two. Like,
Correct. I
what,
sat in
like,
a few alphas, but that was
okay,
it.
right, but it didn't go anywhere. I sat in some alphas. I
No.
didn't go anywhere with it. I just drove the well, did we go on a ride in alpha? I forget now. But I definitely remember the beta ride, because the beta ride, that thing launched like crazy. And
Oh, yeah,
they
for sure.
said, oh, this is kind of detuned. Like, we kind of like, we're not giving it the full power yet. And I was like, wow, that is crazy, because
Wow.
it launches really hard.
Yeah,
So what are
yeah.
your thoughts? What were your thoughts about driving it?
Oh, it was quite an experience. This is my first time driving a prototype of any kind, so I
Mhm.
was kind of surprised that they were willing to let me
Right. I'm
get
kind of wondering
mine.
how their like insurance thing works out. I mean, that's what I figured, they wouldn't let me drive. They weren't letting people drive, but now they've let a lot of people drive Gamma. They've had
True,
a bunch
true.
of
I've heard several
influencers drive
people.
it. Yeah.
I should preface, I don't know if I included it in the video, but they did have a follow car, which
Okay.
kind of made me feel like special and fancy. I was weird. There was like a big truck with a flatbed that they said he's just going to follow you wherever you go.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay. So they were ready basically to intervene if something went wrong, I guess.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But yeah, we went at a certain portion. I'm trying to remember if it was in the video, but there was a certain highway we went on where we were going, well over 50 miles an hour.
Mhm.
And this is my first time riding it. I didn't have beta or alpha, and I was surprised by the stability of it. Obviously, there were some creaks and rattles. There was some
Yeah.
prototypey things, but I kind of was expecting that going into it. I mean,
Yeah.
my Model 3 has some creaks and rattles
Uh-huh.
sometimes, so I wasn't expecting it to be flawless. I knew they didn't have the carbon fiber body yet, and they were telling me all about how the suspension and stuff on Delta is going to be different than Gamma. So I had kind of a certain expectation that it wasn't going to be flawless, but it was quite eye-opening to me, the difference in visibility in person.
Mhm.
Compared to my Model 3. Like, if you look at the side profile of a Model 3, the window is very flat with
Mhm.
the door panel,
Yeah, you
whereas
mean the
with the
side window.
Aptera, yeah,
Uh-huh.
right. And on the Aptera, there's a good sticker of it here. The window here goes down a lot further than
Okay.
on the Model 3, which
Okay.
helps a lot with the visibility of the wheel pant,
Okay.
because you can see exactly where it is from the driver's seat. The closest wheel pant to you, you can't see the one further from you.
Right.
But the visibility, I thought that big split window design on the website and pictures and stuff, it looked like a bigger issue. It looked
Yeah.
like, oh, that's like right at eye level. I'm going to have a hard time seeing out. And then once I actually started driving around in it, just like how you mentioned in your videos, your brain kind of just blends all the windows together. Your brain is filling in the gaps. When you're in motion, you don't really notice it. And I was impressed with how good the visibility was, both from like I see how far the nose cone goes, so I'm not worried about running into something in front of me.
Mhm.
One big difference with my sedan is that once I, especially once I got back into my Model 3 after driving the Aptera, I realized how boxy most cars are. They just, the side window and everything just goes straight up, and then usually you have your big roof. The Aptera is much more rounded, and you notice that when you get in it, you feel the corner. Your head's a bit closer to the side than maybe a traditional car. Although I didn't find it like too close to like I'm bumping into it accidentally all the time. They definitely thought about the proportions and everything, but yeah, it was, visibility was better than I thought, because I was expecting, based on the website, okay, this is a really wide vehicle with the wheel pants outward mounted. So I thought that was going to be a bigger issue. And then after driving it around, I was like, oh no, you get really comfortable with it. It's not the same thing as driving like a truck that's actually that wide, because now every part of the vehicle sticks out that much, opposed to just the front where you're not even getting out anyway. So when you're in a parking space, obviously those wheel pants are kind of nearing and getting closer to those parking lines, but the part where the door actually opens and you step out is very narrow compared to a truck, or even a sedan. It's more narrower. So I was very grateful for how tight it felt and how easy it was to park and kind of navigate in a tight space. And we took it over some speed bumps and it did fine. So yeah, there was some little things with the powertrain that weren't quite finely tuned right, which I think they know of, like the regen. I don't know if you heard, isn't quite there yet, so you have to go back to 2-pedal driving if you're used to 1-pedal driving. So that was a little bit of a learning curve. It was like I was used to my Model 3 coming to a stop on its own, and then in the Aptera, it's like, no, you actually got to push the brake. Okay.
Did it have any regen?
I don't think that one did at all.
Okay.
I don't think it was active, but I don't think that's production intent. I'm pretty confident they definitely want 1-pedal driving. Knowing how efficiency focused they are, I'd be very shocked if they just said no regen. So that was, I think, just a Gamma thing. The other thing was like, there's a manual, it's not built into the screen, but there was like a manual parking brake, just a little switch underneath the display, and they just said, yeah, just hold this down for 5 seconds and then let go. So they had some way of, because it was hand built, so I wasn't looking at those kinds of things as like, oh, you should fix this for the, they know all that, but there was little things. I think a mistake I kept making, partly because I'm a Tesla driver currently, is that when you signal, they didn't have this system ready where after a certain amount of turns on the yoke, the blinker shuts off.
Oh, right.
So on the Gamma, it was like you signal and then you complete your turn and then you have to turn the blinker off.
Right.
Which they said, we're aware of that. That's not going to be on Delta. But there were just little things for the prototype that you had to be aware of.
Did they tell you whether like the turning, like how many times you have to turn the yoke is the same on Gamma as the PI builds? Or was that something
that's a good question? I remember asking about the turning radius, because I thought Gamma's was pretty good. I mean, maybe my expectations were too low or something, but they said that the Delta production intent turning radius would be twice as good as Gamma. And I thought Gamma was pretty decent already. Yeah. So I was impressed by that. But yeah, I would assume, based on how much I was turning it, that it would probably be the same.
Okay.
I don't think there was that many more spins you could bake into it, so I would assume it's the same. But now, after watching all this Cybertruck content, I'm really hoping Aptera could make steer-by-wire work someday.
That's definitely not happening initially. They have a mechanical linkage. So you're not used to driving with a yoke, right? Your Model 3 doesn't have a yoke. It's a regular
no yoke
wheel.
On the 3. I shortly, about a week after I drove Gamma, I drove around a Model S with a yoke, and maybe it's my attitude towards things. I consider myself a bit of a futurist, and like as soon as there's a new standard or a new thing that comes out that everyone thinks is the future, I just kind of force myself to get used to it. I'm just like, okay, that makes more sense. I'm going to get used to it. So maybe it's because I'm young or something and I'm just adaptable, but I didn't find it a big deal at all.
Right.
I've heard many people complain about the blinker buttons and the yoke and having to turn it around. And yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but I was ready after 5 minutes. I was like, okay, just pivot from this point and you're good. And That there was a difference with Gamma from the production version, which they said that there's basically no power steering in Gamma.
Right.
So you complete a turn, if you let go, it'll just keep going. You have to manually push it
Oh,
back.
okay. It didn't return
And
to
I asked
center
that.
very well. Yeah.
No, it did not pretty much at all return to center, but they said that that will be there's some things they can do with the suspension and also
Correct.
physical power steering they can do to fix that. So
yeah,
they were glad I asked, though.
Yeah. I mean, those are like two things that you hear from a lot of people, is like that they think that that divided window is going to be like a terrible, terrible problem. And that's what
I
you
understand
were
the
concerned about that too. And it turned
I
out
had
when you tried it,
that
it wasn't
exact
that
same
bad.
issue.
Yeah. And
I
then
think that's a lot of things.
People are really concerned about the yoke as well. A lot of people are. And I've never driven a yoke myself, but I just figure like can't be that hard to get used to.
Yeah, and I mean the thing to remember is I don't think the yoke is better in every single situation, but in most situations of driving, I do think it's better, particularly visibility. If you're going to have a display back there, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to have a yoke on a vehicle that doesn't have a driver display. Like on my Model 3, there's nothing back there, wouldn't help with visibility. It's fine. But on the Aptera, you've got a UI that I've honestly kind of fallen in love with now, having those blind spot cameras right behind the yoke. Very convenient position, very high frame rate, by the way. I was very happy with those displays and the cameras they were using. And you can see those so much better with a yoke, especially where they have it mounted. And if you had a full steering wheel, that would cut into your visibility more of those cameras. Oh, that was another thing. I don't know if I mentioned that, but the mirrors on Gamma are totally useless.
Yeah, they're totally worthless.
They're doing nothing.
Yeah.
Not only are they not in a great place to see, which is why I kept asking about, so how do we remove these guys? But also they weren't like a traditional mirror. It was like just a reflective surface, like a fun house.
Right.
You know,
yeah,
just
I
like
wonder like on the PI builds
thing.
how effective those mirrors are going to be, because they are blocked by the divider, right?
Right. Yeah, you can't see them much at all. And I think Chris was kind of winking me on that, because I was like, so how do we remove it? And he was like, well, legally those mirrors are great, you know. He kept emphasizing on the legal point, those mirrors let you see everything, they're great. And I was like, oh, okay, I got it. But then Jason was the one who reiterated that they're using like an Allen wrench or something very basic to remove them, which, because those displays are there with the camera feeds, it's going to be the easiest thing to get used to visibility wise.
Now,
and it helps your arrow.
Did you like having those right in the front? Was that because that's not how we usually drive? You know, we drive by looking at the side mirror and then looking over there to change lanes and stuff. How did you feel like that made sense pretty quickly?
Yeah, again, I might be biased because I'm kind of a futurist, and I mean, in my Model 3, I'm very used to now the repeater cameras showing up whenever I signal. They already pop up on the main display. So I had gotten kind of comfortable with that. In fact, when we were on our Colorado trip, I was driving a Subaru, and I found myself every time I signal, I would look at the center display because I was checking to see if someone was there, and I was like, oh wait, yeah, mirrors, they're a thing. So maybe my perspective is biased, but I found that fairly intuitive. I mean, if you just think about the total distance your eyes are traveling from road screen, and probably some people will need to adjust as well with the rear view screen, because a lot of people are used to their eye like focal distance being far away, and they look at the mirror and that's also far away, whereas now you need to focus on something a mere few inches away. Yeah, there's a learning curve for sure, and I could see some people being frustrated with that, but I don't think it's a deal breaker for all the advantages the product has. So there's a learning curve. I think some people will go, oh yeah, I gotta kind of reset the way my eyes look at screens versus mirrors and that kind of thing.
What did you think of the driving position? Like, because it's very flat and your feet are like out kind of flat in front of you, right?
Yeah. This one did have the seat adjustments. I know not all the prototypes let you like move the seat back and forth, but I got in a pretty comfortable position and I was fairly happy with it. If anything, I would say just because of the overall roundedness of the body, I did feel a little bit off to the side visibility wise, or just position wise, because obviously you got two seats up there, but it's more rounded all around the edges than a typical car. So you feel like your head is kind of close to, I don't know, a bit more left bias than maybe what you're used to in a traditional car, but not horrible, but yeah, a little bit to the side than a traditional car, because you're used to your windshield kind of going up into the corner of your vision, whereas now it's kind of rounding out a little bit closer.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't feel like I couldn't see my surroundings very well. I was very impressed with the visibility, everything around me. And I think given the general shape of the vehicle, there probably isn't a better way to position yourself without fundamentally redesigning everything.
But how about like the seating position and like the way your legs were out? Was that relatively comfortable for you?
Oh yeah, I felt extremely comfortable as soon as I sat in it, honestly. I was very impressed by the leg room. I felt like, especially in the passenger seat, I had more leg room than my Model 3. So other than like those external mirrors, which are kind of pointless, but don't tell the the government that, they're just kind of there and you can't see them very well. But other than that, yeah, I felt comfortable with the driving position. My wife also sat in the driver's seat and the passenger seat. She felt comfortable with it. And I was not expecting the seats to be as comfortable as they were, considering it was a prototype. So I think they got the seating position down.
And what did your wife think about it?
Yeah, she really liked it. I mean, she doesn't have like a ton of thoughts on most tech I showed her. I'm always trying to get more opinions out of her whenever I can, but she was like, whoa, that feels very sleek. It feels like the future. And yeah, she was happy with it. She was surprised by the look. And the one thing that I've seen you talk about, and many others as well, that I kind of agree with her on, the one downside of this design is it definitely turns a lot of heads.
Oh yeah,
you attract a lot of attention, and my wife and I don't like that.
Yeah,
we like to blend in with the crowd. We don't want to draw a bunch of eyes towards us. So which is why we got, kind of a very popular vehicle currently. It's like in California, at least with Model 3s, no one's gonna
blend right in,
look twice.
Yeah.
As Rich Rebuilds calls them, the California Camrys, right?
Yeah,
they're very simple. They're very just, yep, that's a sedan, whatever, it's electric. And that's what we liked about it. And I love the numbers of the Aptera and I love the look, but at least for the first few years of production, it's definitely you're going to have to talk about it everywhere you go.
Yeah. Whenever you park the thing, people are going to be like, what is that thing?
Right. It happened to us at a stoplight. I'd only been driving it for like 5 minutes. And this guy in a Prius was just like, hey, what is that? So we had to roll down the window and be like, yeah, look up Aptera. She was suggesting to them, my wife actually, I'm so jealous. She got to meet the CEO and Jason in person while I was out test driving. So she got to catch up with them. She was suggesting that they should drive it around and put the actual name, the actual brand on the side. She said, that's your best advertising.
Yeah.
Because in Gamma's current design, I mean, it doesn't really need the word Aptera for me driving it around, but
if you're trying what it is.
We know what it is, exactly. So I'm with you. I'd be okay with them ditching all logos and branding. I think the vehicle's iconic enough that you could probably get by without a single logo on the whole thing. But when people see the logo, they still don't know what to look up.
Exactly.
So, I mean, they put QR codes on things and stuff, but if they just put the name Aptera on the side, that's what she was suggesting to them. You guys should drive it around and let people know, let them look it up, let them know the word and the brand.
Right.
So yeah, she's all on board. She's into it.
Okay. Yeah, my wife thinks it's the weirdest looking thing ever. She's like, why are you always interested in these bizarre looking cars? And I have a reservation in for a Cybertruck too. I've decided.
Oh, you do?
I do. Wow. Yeah, I was one of the very early reservation holders. I have a very early reservation number. But
oh, cool. I never reserved one actually. Everyone thought I did.
But the price is kind of crazy now.
Yeah, I had kind of expected that, but
yeah. I mean, it's not, if you compare it to the other trucks, it's not crazy, compared to the Rivian or the price is in line with the competition. But when I signed up for the $40,000 truck, and it's not
you wanted the rear-wheel drive?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one I wanted.
But it's not a $40,000 truck, so
No, but I
And
felt
also,
similarly about the pricing with Aptera. Is like, I know there's a lot of talk about them increasing, but
uh-huh,
I advocated both on and off the record with Chris Anthony. I was like, I think you're charging too little. Like, there's a ton of demand for this kind of thing. And yes, it's niche,
uh-huh.
but look at what Tesla's doing. They fluctuate their pricing on like a weekly basis
Yeah,
based on what the supply and demand is at that time.
right.
And I'm just all in favor of, I don't care if they scrap the referral program. I don't care if they raise prices. I just want them to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just there's so many solar EV companies that went under that you
Mm-hmm.
reported on them, you're well aware of. So I was like, we just need to make sure that you guys are profitable and around, and we can worry about the masses and bringing prices down later. Let's just
Uh-huh.
focus on making sure you all stay afloat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if they don't stay afloat, those of us who have it will have orphan vehicles, which is not a good place to
True.
be.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I talked to Chris Anthony, I think like I interviewed him like a month ago, and he's planning on doing like kind of the Tesla model of pricing, where the prices fluctuate based on their costs. And he says, we're just gonna price it so that we make a little bit of profit so that we stay afloat. And we want to make it as cheap as possible, but cheap as possible while we still are solvent as a business. And I'm like,
Yeah, right.
I think that's a reasonable plan. Yeah, I
Well,
think
that's
that's
the most wholesome way to do it, I think.
yeah.
But
Okay, so you got to go in and see some of the factory as well. And
yes,
I watched your video, great video, by the
thank
way.
you.
It looked kind of like a display, like they would set up
Yes.
for like to look for investors and stuff. It wasn't really a
Right.
factory.
Right.
From what I could tell, like, and were there like other people that were off camera there working? Like, did you see engineers and stuff off working in the background? Because
Yes.
like in your video, there was like basically you guys and
Yeah.
no one else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should reiterate, and I probably could have done a better job explaining that in the video. There was just so many details I was trying to stitch together. I didn't think to include this. But as I should have mentioned, the reason they were free, the reason we got this up close look is because they were telling me most of the company right now is in Italy. They were like, most of the people working on the manufacturing line were working with CPC, focusing on those giant carbon fiber parts. They said that's what all their attention is on. And because everybody's kind of gone right now, like Steve Fambro wasn't there, and so many other people that would normally be working there were all out working in Italy with CPC. They said that's why we can open the doors and show you around. That's why we have free time to talk to nobodies like me with our cameras. And can I bring my wife along? Can she ask questions? That's like, if they were actually operational and there were a ton of people working in there and stuff was moving around, you wouldn't have seen it. We wouldn't have got videos of that, right? Because they'd be busy and they'd be like hands-on working on stuff. So they reiterated to me that a lot of the company is out of town right now. And I did see some people working on like control boards. They were doing like kind of logic board soldering stuff, but obviously they were working and they looked focused. So I didn't want to like knock them on the shoulder. Hey, talk to me. I was just along for the ride. I'm happy to see whatever you want to show me. But there were some stuff that they asked me not to film. They said this is kind of proprietary stuff, and we'll announce that at the right time, but we don't want to announce it through your tiny YouTube channel or whatever. So I was like, that's fine. I was not even expecting to get the tour, so I was just grateful to be there. But yeah, the off the record conversations were very, very uplifting and positive. So I was happy to hear how things were going. Outside of that, we actually had a lot of discussions and a lot of up close looks at the user interface that they said, don't like get close-ups of this. Just, it's okay in the background. But that was actually the most exciting part to me, because I'm a big software guy. Like, the main reason I have a Tesla is not for performance. I got the slowest Tesla possible, but I just was mainly into efficiency, but also I love good software. And for a long time, I've been saying on my channel, like, probably the weakest point of Aptera is that, they're a small company and they don't have a lot of expense for software. But after seeing what I did at the factory, I was like, oh, dang, they've got very, very talented software engineers that are making some incredible stuff that I was like, can I share this, please?
Mm-hmm.
It looked really cool. And it made me rethink the way Tesla even does their software. So
Oh,
now,
okay.
I feel like my Model 3 doesn't have what I'm looking for. So they
Ah,
really just made me more jealous of what I don't have.
I see.
But they said, yeah, it'll come. We'll announce that formally later. But there
Yeah.
was a lot more software guys working there than assembly line guys. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, it was because a lot of people were out of town. That's why we were able to go,
I
essentially.
see. I see. Hey, so if any of this stuff is stuff that they told you not to talk about, just say like, we can't talk
Sure.
about that. And yeah, I know,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Is like a lot of the off the record stuff is the best stuff.
Yeah.
That
You understand why it's off the record.
yeah,
I'm sure
it's
you've had those talks
yeah,
too.
like like whenever I was interviewing Chris Anthony and stuff, we always chat for a little bit after we're done, and like that's
That's
like kind of the
awesome.
best part of the whole thing. And I was
Right.
like, I wish I could
It
record that
kills
and
me
like tell
inside. It
everyone,
always
yeah,
kills me
because I'm like,
when they
hey,
say stuff and you're like, ah,
and
only
I
they could
get the
hear.
you get the impression like when they're off camera, they're kind of more relaxed and stuff when they know
Yeah.
they're not
Yeah.
being recorded. And I get the impression like, hey, these are like really smart guys that like know what they're
Yes.
doing. And that's kind of the
Yes.
impression I get from them.
And they have to be very careful with the SEC, with as many investors as they're dealing
Yeah.
with. I should preface all of my don't talk about this is all just out of politeness. I have not signed anything.
Yeah.
I have no NDAs. I have no contracts. And
Right.
also, I haven't invested at this
Oh,
time. I'm not an investor.
you're not an
So
investor. Yeah.
I've debated how many angles I want to come at that between accelerator versus not versus I want to figure out a way to basically be the first guy to get the 1,000-mile variant.
Oh, right.
But I don't know if I've talked them into it yet.
Yeah.
But I offered many times. I kept dropping him. When you're ready for range testing, let me know. I'll come down. I want to get involved in some way, but a lot of people are like, "Oh, Drew's just so positive because he's invested," and I just want to say, "Nope."
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I've told people like I'm invested, but it's an amount that like it doesn't matter to me. Like if I lose it, it's fine. And I honestly think like obviously we should preface this, we're not financial investment professionals. Do not take financial advice from us. Also, I've told people on my channel multiple times I'm like the worst track record of financial investments ever. I sold Apple after they made their first the first iPod, with the wheel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they made that.
Oh, man.
And then I sold after that because I was like, these guys have no more good ideas left. They're done. That iPod was their last good idea. Okay. I'm like, I doubled my money on them. I'm happy. I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna take my profits and leave. Okay, obviously that was a horrible decision financially, right?
Well, I mean, give yourself some credit. Everybody knows what they should have done after the fact.
Oh yeah, obviously.
If we knew the future, everybody would have poured their life savings in GameStop before the big squeeze. It like,
did you watch that movie?
Anyone can look at the stock market. About
the GameStop. There's a movie about the GameStop short. It was called Dumb Money. It's actually a good movie.
I did see the trailer for it. What's it on? Where did
it's actually it's a pretty good movie.
Did you see it in the theater?
Yeah. We saw it in the theater. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was good.
I gotta remember. I haven't been to the theater in so long. Anyway, that's cool.
Anyways, yeah. So I'm invested, but it's a small amount. So it's not gonna like it. I'm biased because I like it, not biased because I'm an investor. I'm not like it's not like a pump and dump scheme or anything, because like that's not going to make any impact on my life,
especially because it's not like publicly traded, so you can't, which I think was smart the way they handled that, because essentially like Nikola was the example of what not to do, because they were publicly traded, so the CEO had a lot of financial incentive to pump the stock through the news and through interviews. He was like, I need to convince as many people as possible to buy this stock. He even DM'd some of my friends directly on Instagram, telling them to buy the stock. We have some very funny DMs from Trevor Milton, but which are hilarious looking at now. But with Aptera being semi-public, they're not motivated to pump the stock or anything, because the share prices remain the same for like over a year now, right? It's still $10.50 a share.
$10.50 a share, yeah.
So there's not this motivation from the company like, oh, we got to put out some good story. Someone's trying to tank the stock. It's like, no. I mean, Chris Anthony has talked about it. I think he's brought several companies public before. He kind of knows when it's the right time versus when it's not. And I have to argue with a lot of people online about the state of the company, because there's just this, and we talked a lot about it with them too, and they follow a lot of different startups and are kind of trying to take notes about what not to do. And I keep trying to remind people that there's not some like barrier of validity that gets crossed when deliveries start. A lot of people seem to have that mindset of like, oh, well, they're not a real company, they haven't delivered a product. If they've delivered a product, that means they're legit, they're for real, they'll always be here, they exist.
Right.
It's no longer pump and dump, or it's no longer a scam. It's like, nah, that still some really horrible things can happen even if you reach deliveries.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you rush into production way too fast, then okay, you'll get the good headline, deliveries have begun. Okay, they delivered a product, and then you'll go bankrupt in a couple months, which we've seen happen with a few brands, or a few brands are on their way to that. It's like, just because you reach production and hit deliveries, that doesn't mean smooth sailing from then on out. And I think more people should acknowledge that, particularly with Aptera, because they're being as careful and as strategic as they can. They know you can't rush this, you can't jump into production too quick, otherwise you bankrupt yourself. So I applaud the strategy.
Did you see, like, so they have this solar production line? Did you see evidence that they've been producing a lot of panels, or it seemed like a demo panel? Because what I'm thinking is, let me explain to you what I'm thinking is, like, they have said that they're kind of, it seems like that they're waiting for CPC to deliver them a body and a chassis to build the PI things. If that is the case, they should have all the other parts kind of ready to go. If that's the, if CPC is the rate limiting factor. So I'm just like wondering, did you see evidence of that? Like, do they have solar panels just like ready to put on the thing? Do they have battery packs, that kind of stuff?
One of the things, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. One of the things I was asked not to film was basically something, it wasn't operating, but it was something that was specifically for creating and building tons and tons of solar cells. And they do have a separate, I won't say where they are or who they are, but they have a supplier picked out for a lot of the components for the, like the new glass they've been boasting about lately. They're switching away from the plastic solar and going with this new, they let me hold it too, it was very lightweight but flexible. That new glass is from a very important, let's say, supplier. And my guess is, because Aptera is trying to be efficient, not just with their product but also with their spending, is that they know that the bink and all the carbon fiber components, that's going to be the most expensive, so that's where all their investment is going towards. And they could technically, yes, they could start buying up a bunch of Elafe motors or a bunch of interior components or a bunch of glass pieces, but they know those are kind of like less priority, because there's not as big a lead time basically on those. So the short answer is no, I didn't see like a giant stack of solar panels all stacked up on themselves, but they definitely have a supply chain and a contract with someone prepared for that when the time comes. But I believe the carbon fiber giant body pieces from CPC, those are the priority now, because everything else is probably cheaper.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions I had for you, Drew. Any final thoughts? Or
oh man, I trying to I got so many questions for you. Maybe I should have you on here.
No, I'm, like I said,
still,
after I visit them in January, I'm happy to talk to you afterward and
I guess
do this on your channel.
My big question, final thought for you is, like, do you talk to people in your personal life about it as much as I do? Like, are you bringing it up all the time, or do you kind of keep it under wraps because it's weird?
So I told you, like, I have a day job, and I'm a teacher, And so I don't
Oh,
talk
nice.
I don't talk about it a lot. I don't like just
Yeah,
bring it up, but
sure.
when people talk about cars and stuff, I bring it up. I'm like, oh, there's this
Sure.
cool thing that's coming down, or they're like,
Yeah, yeah.
they're like asking me like, hey, so like, because I have this kind of, I ride my bike to work every day. I don't
That's
really have
awesome.
I don't really have a car, but
I love that you do that.
yeah, when they ask me about it, I tell them about it, but I don't bring it up out of the blue. I bring it up when there's an opening. Like if I see an opening, I will bring it
Gotcha.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You're a
they
lot
know
more
that I'm a
polite than I
fan of
am.
this thing, and I've had a couple of my friends at work, my coworkers have ordered it. They've pre-ordered it. They're like, oh,
Oh, really?
yeah. They're like,
Oh,
oh,
that's
that looks
cool.
cool, and I'm like, yeah, like yeah. Here's the link to like order it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
uh,
What is, sorry, do you need to wrap up? We can wrap up if you're running
no,
out.
fine.
Okay. Well, my next question was going to be like, when you bring it up to people or show it to people, what's usually the first reaction? Like, what's their first impulse when they see the design?
Okay, there's two reactions basically. One is
Okay.
okay, everyone says it's like that looks weird. And then the people that like it are like, that looks weird and cool. The people that don't like
Yeah.
it, like, that looks weird, like it's a death trap.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I get the exact same thing. That's funny. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah, because that is, I
that's
think that's
usually
the
why when I
primary concern, especially in
Mhm.
America, where like, our roads are dominated by like 3-row SUVs, like Yukons and Escalades and things like that.
Mm.
People just feel like, unless I'm in this giant hunk of steel, I'm not safe.
Yeah,
And of
yeah.
course they think I'm crazy because I ride my bike on the roads, right? Like like I'm not winning a battle with anything, right? On a bicycle. So I'm like,
Maybe
so
a
like when
cat.
I tell them it's safe, they're like, dude, your frame of reference is you're on a bicycle, okay? So anything's safer than that. But I'm like, no, it's like,
Right.
it's like it's a shape, the shape is round and that's very strong, and it's made of a material that's very strong, and it's got these crush zones and stuff. I mean, like obviously if you get into a crash with a Cybertruck, you're not winning that battle, but it's
Sure. Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping that we move towards a society that has more right-sized vehicles, like
Yes.
you don't need a 8,000-pound vehicle to go get like eggs from the grocery store. Okay. You don't need 8,000 pounds to carry like 1 pound of
Right.
eggs or something.
Believe it or not, yeah.
Yeah.
Such an idea. Yeah, I try to bring that up a lot whenever I bring up to people before they've even seen it. I usually say, the trick with making a solar powered electric vehicle is to make it very aerodynamic and efficient while also keeping it safe. So there's a lot of precautions and design schemes they put into it to ensure safety and a good crumple zone and side impact protection while still looking bizarre, because obviously everybody looks at it and just is like, I've never seen anything like that. But yeah, and I also tend to bring up, like, my uncle actually got to tag along. I was very surprised by that. Like,
Mm.
morning of, I was like, hey, my uncle, who's an engineer, I was like, he's kind of interested in this stuff too. But what my uncle always brings up is he's concerned about the grid and all these EVs pulling way more energy than
Yeah.
we've ever pulled from the grid before. So I said, well, hey, here's a EV that would barely touch the grid. Even when it does, it's going to pull so much less compared to a traditional EV.
Mhm.
So you might be interested in this kind of thing. So he said, well, can I come with you? Can I
Uh-huh.
look around too?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, let me check. And I asked, and they were like, of course, bring him over. So
Uh-huh.
they were surprisingly accommodating. And he even asked him
And
a
what
few
what did
questions. He
he
didn't
think
want to
of the
be
whole
in the
thing?
video. Oh, I think he was pleasantly surprised.
Uh-huh.
He's a tall guy. He's like 6'3", and he sat in
Uh-huh.
the passenger seat. It reminded him of his old sports cars he grew up with. And Chris McCannon actually got to floor it with him in it, so he got to experience the
Okay.
acceleration and all that. So he was, I don't know if it convinced him necessarily to order one yet,
Uh-huh.
but he was a lot more interested after that,
Oh, right.
knowing that they were, because he basically lives close by, which is
Okay, yeah.
why I was like, I'll come down. And they were like, you want to fly? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to stay with my uncle and visit, just drive down the street basically. So that's kind of worked out well, so that if there is something in the future,
right,
I can go down and crash there and just drive over. So
right.
it's pretty far from where I live. You're quite a bit closer, but I don't know. One of these days, I don't want to steal your thunder or anything, but I'd still love to go together at some point so we can both meet them in person. And
yeah, absolutely. Maybe sometime next
questions.
year when they have several of these things built, and we can coordinate something.
I feel like we probably have a lot of shared audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I will link your channel in the description below, so everyone, I'm sure everyone who watches my channel knows about you. Your channel's like, way bigger than ours.
They're probably sick of me. I love your videos that aren't about Aptera too, by the way. I question if you feel like you have to talk about Aptera, because the videos you've done about, like, I was repeating all the backstory on lawns you told that one year on how it was meant as a flex to show how much useless land you have.
Yes.
And that totally changed my perspective on yards and lawns and stuff. So I was telling my family's like, okay, Drew, we get it. Shut up. And I was like, no, it's really a waste of water and all that.
Yeah. I have good stuff. I have very different views about lots of things. So
well, you're just so good at explaining it. Like, I don't know, you pitch it in a way that it's hard to argue against. So that's how you just convince someone that to change their way of thinking, I feel like.
Well, thank you.
Talking about energy independence in different countries and stuff like that. It's awesome.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, again, thanks a lot, Drew, for talking to us and kind of getting, get kind of a first person perspective, like vicariously we visited them through you. And so I appreciate that.
No problem. Anytime.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks. And we'll talk later.
Bye-bye.